Joining us now with an update on market conditions is Jessica Caldwell, Edmunds Executive Director of Industry Insights. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So talk to us, give us a brief overview of the industry sales right now.
Yeah, things have been pretty good. We just finished the first half of the year in June, and Q2 was pretty decent. I mean, you kind of like hold your breath there in terms of sales, but if you look at the industry SAR for those months, all over 15 million. I mean, of course, it's not the 17 million we were seeing pre-pandemic,
Right.
but compared to the way that things have been for the past few years, we're definitely seeing year-over-year increase. So that means inventory is getting a little better. Consumers are finally coming back to the market. There's so much pent-up demand out there. It's kind
Yeah.
of, really the question of the forecast for this year and next year is, when will consumers come back into the market and buy cars? Because we know that they're out there.
Yeah, for sure. Where does pricing stand right now on new and used vehicles?
Pricing is still pretty high. I mean, if we looked at June, the ATPs were the second highest they've ever been, only to December 2022. And usually December always has the highest ATPs because of the sales mix.
Yeah.
So they're still looking relatively strong. We are seeing some discounts come back into the market. Cars are not being sold over MSRP at this point. I think consumers would really respond to any sort of deal messaging, whether it's leasing or whether it's interest rate. And on the same side, on the used side, it's pretty much the same as well. I mean, we're almost at $30,000 as an average ATP. So things have cooled off slightly from the highs of 2022.
Okay.
But even if you look at where used pricing was on aggregate in June, it was still 43% higher than where it was in June 2019. So
Wow.
although it looks like it's softening, if you look at a historical perspective, it's still really high. So for those consumers coming back into the market after they've owned 5, 6, 7 years, it's probably a bit of a, they're still getting sticker shock.
Yes, and probably getting sticker shock on the value of their trade-in as well, because they're, if they purchased 3 years ago and they paid sticker price or above, and now they're trading that vehicle in, 3 years later, it's a different story, right? I mean, it's going to be a tough situation to get out of those cars.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really applies to people that have probably purchased last year when things were absolutely bananas. And people were just buying cars because they could get them because inventory was so little that they just thought, oh, this car is available, I'm going to buy it. And then they live with it for 8, 9, 12 months. And it's like, wait a second, this is not working for me whatsoever.
That's right. It's a very good point.
That situation of negative equity is real for a lot of people.
Right. So we'll see those probably in the next couple of years coming back into the showrooms, right?
Yeah, I think people perhaps hoping that their trade-in or at least their loan is, depending on what they have it for an interest rate, is a little more favorable than it probably is.
What kind of impact is interest rates having in all of this?
Oh, I mean, they're having a pretty big impact. I mean, if we look just on the new side, the average APR is over 7, it's around 7%. And on the used side, it's 11%. So you combine these high prices with these high interest rates, and all of a sudden you have monthly payments that are really high. And again, it's just a shock for a consumer because chances are they were in the dealership many years ago when interest rates, I mean, they were so cheap. And it was like kind of like an afterthought, the F&I office. You go in there and be like, okay, what does my monthly payment look like? But now you have to factor in for consumers, and especially for dealers counseling consumers buying cars, factor in the loan cost, because at 7%, you're on a $40,000 loan, you're probably paying close to $9,000 in interest. And all of a sudden you have that $9,000 to the price you paid, and it's definitely a different monthly payment than what you were expecting. So I think that is probably something I imagine dealers are running into, quite a bit.
Sure. Now we are seeing a lot of subvented programs out there. If you just watch television for any longer than an hour, you're going to see quite a few ads from OEMs that are touting 1.9. Some are 0% for 48 months, and it seems like everybody's got some special hitting that interest rate point, right?
Yeah, definitely more than what we have seen. And I think that really is going to work well for automakers doing that, because we're even seeing consumers come in and they're not financing at the dealership as much as they used to, because people used to turn up the dealership and they're going to buy the car, get the loan, everything there. We're seeing people bring more outside financing in, people paid in cash just because of these interest rates. So the fact that there are subvented programs out there is definitely going to help the case a lot.
Sure. Are inventory levels back to where they once were back in 2019?
Not quite, I would say. And who's to say they're ever going to get back to that level? I mean, before the pandemic, I mean, we looked at inventory probably in the 3 to 4 million range, and now it's a little less than around hovering like 2 million. So we're still missing a ton of inventory. But
Yeah.
I think, for automakers, just trying to find the sweet spot of how do I keep consumers, not lose them, keep my margins good, keep my dealers' margins good, trying to figure that out is kind of, I think, where they are now, like deciding like what is that optimal amount of inventory. And you hear production stopping in certain factories and
Yeah.
starting back up, adding more shifts. So it feels like there's a lot in flux right now.
Yeah, for sure. And where do we stand on EVs? Do consumers want EVs?
That is $1 million question, isn't it? Everybody wants to know. I mean, EV market share is growing. It's almost at 7% for 2023, and it has grown every year. I think what will hit the bump in the road is once we move past the early adopters, people with high income levels that can afford these expensive EVs. It's kind of like, okay, now what? If you have $100,000 to spend, the EV market is great. Unfortunately, most Americans are not in that budget.
Yeah.
So I think what we really need is probably more affordable EVs, because when we did a survey, the people that said, nope, not buying an EV, cost was the number one answer. So it's not as much infrastructure, although that was number two. So I think the lower price EVs need to come to market. Perhaps a marketplace for better used EVs, that's going to take a while, but
Sure.
once that happens, that's going to be a good thing for consumers. And then the infrastructure, because people just hear horror stories, and we and a lot of times the infrastructure in some areas works absolutely fine, but you only remember the story where someone was stranded on a road trip.
I know. As if nobody's ever run out of gas before, right? That wouldn't make a front page story.
No, definitely not. And I think, in some areas that, the infrastructure is just better than others. And that's where we'll see more sales concentrated.
Sure. What are some of the big things that you think dealers should be paying attention to or to be looking out at as we enter the second half of 2023?
Well, interest rates, I think that's a big thing, like how to get your consumers at low interest rates, whether it's from the automaker themselves who subvented, or, banks that you work with. I think that message is definitely going to work well. For any dealers that are selling EVs out there, leasing, we've noticed, has become big because the federal tax credit applies to any vehicle if it is leased. So we saw lease go from, the penetration was about 8% in November because nobody was leasing, particularly EVs.
Yeah.
And last month it was 44%. So
oh, wow. What a huge jump.
Yes, that's a mass. And every month this year, we saw it go up. Right. So I think, for dealers, talking to consumers about trying to attain better prices to get them in an EV, because I've heard, some EV inventories are a bit backed up. Leasing is a good one, especially if you can apply the tax credit.
And with the average price of a new car being as high as it is today, leasing has got to play a role in this, right, to get cars out the door.
Yeah, I mean, definitely so. I mean, the thing about leasing is that it generally looks the most attractive when the interest rate or the money factor is subvented along with the residual value. And right now, there hasn't really been a reason to do either of those things in the land of tight inventory. So that's going to change, I think, this year. But leasing is such a great avenue because a lot of consumers, that's what they want to do. They want a new car every 3 years, and they do, particularly an EV, because the technology will change a lot. So it's just another avenue, I think, to offer your consumers.
Sure. It is amazing as to how many people are taking 72 and 84-month financing plans right out of the showroom, and they're going to be back in the next 36, 42 months wanting a new car. So it's just, hopefully that car maintains its value to some degree, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a great thing, but the trend that we are seeing is that people that perhaps are more fiscally responsible, they're opting for lower loan terms, so like the 48 or even the 36, and they're just going to just make those higher payments in a shorter period of time, and then they are counterbalanced with the folks that are, they're pushing it out as far as they can to get the monthly payments as low, and that generally is a bit of a risky bet. Unless you know that this is the car you want for the next decade, you're going to drive it to the ground, the tires fall off, then that's a great plan. But that's not what we do as Americans.
No, it's not. It really isn't. So, Jessica Caldwell, Executive Director of Industry Insights at Edmunds, thank you so much for joining us once again on the show. I know our viewers get a lot out of your visit with us. So thanks so much.
Thank you.